Hi again. So last time I showed you how I set up a room in this system, quite similar to Adventure Game Studio. And next I'm going to show you how to do some basic interactions with objects, and which is basically how you make puzzles and add dialogue and all that stuff. So I'll select the Room tab and go to one of the props. Say we want to interact with the book. It's over here, this one. I've got these buttons here that let me quickly add or just go to the look at, use inventory item on scripts. And it's very similar to the way the actions work in Adventure Game Studio that I showed you in the first video. So if I click one, say I'll click the look button, that'll open up Mono Develop. Takes a little while the first time because it wasn't open, but it'll open that up. It'll create it's the first time I clicked it, yeah, so it'll create a new script for Room Lab, and it'll add this new function on look at prop book. So that's all sort of added for you, and you can just start typing in your commands there. And then later on, once you've got a few in that room, it'll just basically, when you press that button, take you straight to that function, so you can edit it or type in it. So it makes it quite easy to find an interaction you wanted to edit or look at. So the way the scripting works is quite similar to Adventure Game Studio. So you'll tell a character to walk to a point, and it'll wait for that line to finish and then go to the next line, which is maybe the character saying something. But there is a bit of a caveat with Unity scripting, is that if you're familiar with it, you'll notice that this is actually a coroutine. So that means that it's a function where you can kind of have the function pause while something's happening and then continue later. So that requires you to use this yield return line. So basically, whenever I want the script to wait before going to the next line, they say yield return. And so, for example, c.gym, which is how I get to my main character, I'll tell him to, so the character has a bunch of pretty easy to use functions. So he's got a say function for talking, he's got a walk to function for walking to places. There's a walk to clicked, so that's a pretty useful one if you just wanted to walk to that walk to point that I showed you. But in this case, he's just looking at the book, so I'll say face clicked. So he'll face towards the clicked item, the clicked object, and then I want him to yield return c.gym.say. It's just a book. This final one is just there in case the function is empty, so I don't actually need that. I can get rid of that one, make it a bit simpler. And so we can just go in there, Unity will compile the script, and we can just hit play and see if something happens when I look at the script. So look at the book, so right clicking is to look, so yeah, he looked at it and said it's just a book. Pretty boring. Let's go and pick up the book. So in my room I've got the book, and I've also got the buttons over here on the right in the inspector where you edit the book settings. So let's so the book starts visible and it starts clickable. Let's interact with the book. Yep, so it's added this function. It also passes in the book, the thing you clicked on, which makes it just a bit handy. So in this case, I want to yield return c.gym.walk to clicked, and then I want to maybe I'll have the narrator say something. So in this case, it's rather than c.gym.talk, it's c.display. c.display, Jim collects the book. And then I'll give Jim that inventory item, so c.gym.add inventory I for inventory .book. And let's make the book that's on the desk disappear as well. So that's just prop, and the books are done by name. The props are done by name. Prop book dot visible equals false, and also want to make it not clickable as well. So they're both kind of tied to each other. A lot of the time you kind of want them to be the same, but sometimes you want something to still be clickable but not be visible just because the sprite's disabled, or it's in a state where you can't see it but you can still click it, or vice versa. And then maybe we'll make it wait for half a second, and then maybe make Jim say, "I love books." Let's see if that works. So look at the book, it's just a book. Click on it, he walks over to it. Jim collects the book. I love books. Awesome. So yeah, I mean, this is the way I like to be able to kind of build out the project. Like, you know, it's a bit clunky having to write all this extra stuff just to write a short line of text, but because you've got sort of the flexibility of being in code, it kind of makes up for that. So if you're writing like huge amounts of dialogue, I'd probably do it in like Word or text, like Notepad or something like that, and then, you know, copy and paste it into here and convert it into the sort of actual game script. But for most part, I like it's pretty nice writing little interactions just like this, because it means you can very easily put in stuff like, okay, the first time he says it's just a book, but the second time maybe he says, actually, it looks like an interesting book. So I could just add an integer variable, book look or something, and, you know, if book look is 0, he'll just say that. Else he says it's actually a pretty cool looking book. There, and then, you know, increment that, and that's all you have to do, like to sort of add a bit more scripting. And that's the sort of thing where if it wasn't in code, that would probably be something you have to like mess around with some stuff in a GUI interface, add a variable somewhere, tweak, like mess around with it. So like ideally I can just do heaps of this sort of thing. So every interaction can have a little bit of code, a little bit of something nice, and it's effortless, you know, to actually make that for me. And then I can also build up like extra little tools that make this sort of thing easier. So in this case, I've actually got a function called occurrences. So I can just say first occurrence book, and then if it's and then the first time it'll do this one, then other times it'll do this. There's another thing you might do quite a bit, which is having say, instead of having it do something different the second time, you might have it always randomly choose between it's just a book, it's an actually pretty cool looking book, I'm sick of looking at this book. So, you know, there's 3 different ones there, and you might want to say, okay, if you know, random equals random dot range from 0 to 2, and then I can do like a little switch statement. So just random case 0. So this is, again, like if you've done a bit of code, this is pretty simple stuff you can write really quickly. And now you've got like a very custom thing where like you know you look at something 3 times and it's random what happens each time. Let's see if it works. And I don't need this book look. Oh, make that one too. Let's look. It's actually pretty. So he'll say the same one. Yeah, so it's random, but you get some repeats. Oh yeah, that actually needed to be 3. The way to, and so I've got another little bit of code that I've put in. Yeah, so now he'll do all 3. Another little bit of code I've got is to shuffle things so that when you have a little bit of random stuff like this, you don't see it like happening. You don't see the same one twice in a row, and you'll get a nice even distribution. And that's something it's a util I've got called shuffled index book look. So I'll make a variable shuffled index book looks equals new shuffled index, and there's 3 of them. And then I can just do that, and then next So yeah, because I'm using Unity, I can just write little scripts like that, and it makes something you do quite often really quick and easy to do. So yeah, now they don't repeat. You get an even distribution of them all. It's really nice. And that's something which doesn't take me that long to do because I'm a coder and I've done a lot of this stuff for previous projects. But if I was using Adventure Game Studio or even using a more another Unity plugin thing, that would be quite fiddly to do. And if I was using, say, a flowchart program, like dialog system or something, it'd be quite laborious to actually make that happen. And most of the time, I just couldn't be bothered. Like, I could just add one interaction because that's an easy thing to do in another system. But having it be random between three is too fiddly, so I just can't be bothered. Yeah, so I guess I'll do another interaction to show you something else. Maybe we'll click on the door and make the door open up. So in my room, we've got the door here, and say we use the door. So it goes to this function on interact prop door, and we'll do the same, like yield return c.gym.walk to clicked, c.gym.face clicked as well, and that's really so the character will, if he walks from a different direction, will not be facing away when he's meant to be interacting with the door. And maybe display gym, let me say the door swings open. Add a bit of a, like, it's nice to, I use this wait function quite a lot because it's nice to be able to time things a bit nicer, and you kind of get used to like the way to pace the dialogue and the action that happens. So I might say like Jim pushes on the door and then like waits a little bit and then plays this animation. So prop door dot animation equals, I think it's door open. So that would set the current animation for that door to be the open animation, but I actually also want to play an animation. So I don't want to just set the kind of the final animation. I want to play the opening animation too. So again, like this can be something I wait for. So I'll like yield return e dot door dot play animation blocking door opening. I believe that's what the animations are called. And then Jim says yield return c.gym.say, that was easy. And then a bit of timing, c.gym.face left, almost ... too easy. All right, so there we've got a bit more complicated thing going on, I think. Let's see if I stuffed up the code or if it works. All right, so say I'm over here, click the door, he walks there, pushes on the door. Oh, it opened. That was easy. It was too easy. Awesome. Well, that was almost too easy. And then yeah, pick this thing up. Close the book. I love books. Now I've got a book. Cool. So another thing that I find quite important in adventure game that like is something from Adventure Game Studio is that things are nice and skippable. Like you can click through things. It helps a lot with testing, but also when you're playing these games, you want to be able to skip through dialogue. You want to be able to, when there's an animation playing, you just want to go, I've already seen this, you want to click it, because you like when you're solving puzzles and walking around and looking at things and investigating, there'll be times where you've already looked at something, you've already kind of done this little sequence, and you don't want to have to sit through it again. So so for that, I like make these things function wait skip, and that means you can skip them. So you don't have to, so you can just like click through it really quickly. But also, this is a feature I stole from Adventure Game Studio. You can say e.start cutscene, and then when the big interaction's finished, e.end cutscene. And so that way, if I've clicked on the door before, and I don't want to have to sit through this whole thing where he pushes on it and says, huh, that was easy, or whatever, then I can just press escape or press the skip, whatever the skip cutscene button is. And so, if it's something where you're doing this door interaction a bunch of times because you're trying to solve a puzzle and you're not quite sure how, you can skip it. So yeah, I skipped it. All easy. So a little bit about how I've coded this stuff. The way so these are all coroutines, and they're all called from they're all in this classroom lab. But say if I've added another character called Dave, I equally might have something where I'm sort of clicking on Dave to be able to use him, use Dave, and it says and c.gym.faceclick, it's Dave, and then Dave might say something back. So what? So being able to add that little interaction very quickly, it's got, it's creating this class for me. It's creating this function for me. It's also creating these little shortcuts in the code for me, Jim and Dave, so that I can easily find those characters. And the way it's doing that is basically by in my editor script, I've got a bunch of bits of code set up to be easy to search and replace in, and I kind of paste that into a new file, and I do a regular expression check and replace the bit I need. So in this case, it's replacing the thing after this character with the name of the character that you just created, and similar with this, if I go to declaration. So this game globals file, I've got it inserting a line of text after this, and so the autocomplete in the scripting all works, and it's got that for rooms and for inventory items and for characters, so it's very easy to do all that stuff in the script without having to search for things by name all the time. So that's one side of it. The other side is how I actually call these functions, and that's by basically using reflection to check, is there a class called character Dave? Then is there a function in that class called onInteract? And if there is, I'll call that function as a coroutine basically. And if there's not, then fall back to a default interaction, which is when you click on something, it just says that's not important or I can't use that. And so so basically the same way that Adventure Game Studio works, but it's all basically just normal Unity scripting. It's nothing special. So if I take that out, the game won't crash or anything, or even if I just delete this whole bit of script, the game will be fine with it. It's all just optional basically, and so it's pretty flexible and robust. Another feature which is pretty important is being able to save and load things. So say if I've got a script for looking at the door, look at the door. Okay, so I've got this script for looking at the door. If I need to know whether the door's open or not, I might have a Boolean door open, and I might need to be if door open yield return c.gym.say the door's open, else door's shut, and then set that boolean when I've opened the door. So in this case, door gets opened here, the boolean equals true. Super simple basic scripting kind of stuff, but the thing is, we need to actually be able to save this variable, if you're saving and loading games. And so I've got the system set up so that all these room scripts and script files, any variables in them will automatically get saved and then loaded again if you load a game. And that was fiddly to set up, but it was fun, like experimenting with how that works. And one of the things I really wanted to do was something that AGS doesn't quite do, which is to be able to have it so like if I like get rid of this variable, then it'll still be able to load a game. So like I won't get into the technical stuff, but if you're curious, you can ask me about how the saving and loading actual code works. But yeah, if it's not there, it'll just be like I won't load that that variable because it's not there. Or if you've added something new, door open to, then if that's not in the save file that you're loading, then the game's fine with that. It just leaves it as the default, and you can just write a little bit of script to cope with the fact that you've added something new. And so that means when you're patching or adding new stuff to the game after the release, you don't like break everyone's save games all the time. And that's something which Adventure Game Studio kind of struggled with, even though it made saving and loading super easy because you don't have to worry about like adding a variable and then it's not going to be, it's not going to be saved and loaded and you have to test it. So yeah, basically I was aiming to get the best of both worlds. So, you can add stuff to your scripts, add heaps of variables and whatever you want, and not have to worry about making sure that they're saving and loading correctly. They should all just work. But that was a bit of a fiddly thing to set up. So it's good to have it there. And yeah, the final thing I think I want to talk about is the game text. So programmers generally are very dead against having any strings just in text, because like what happens if I want to translate this string, or like how am I going to give this string to my voice actor to be able to read it out? And so the way I managed that was I've got another tool in my text system, basically in this Quest editor, and what that does is I'll click it and show you. Is it goes through the script files, adds IDs to each line, and then so adds IDs to each line, and so those IDs will be referenced, and then it has a list internally of all the characters and what they're saying, all the different lines, and then I can use that to translate the strings. And I can also still just go in here and be editing stuff, pushes on the door hard or whatever, and then that's not going to break anything. I just go back and I hit process all text again. I'll wait for the script to finish loading. Don't, because it's got to edit it. Hit process all text again, and it'll just update that text in the thing. And then if I want to give the script to a voice actor, I can just export it. Script. And yeah, it exports it as a nice, easy to read script file. So this is it's got Jim saying it's just a book, the lines he says. There's a dialogue with Dave. So it's got the the on interact for character Dave. There's what's happening, and then the character, what they say. So Jim says it's Dave, and Dave says so what, and it's got the basically what wave file the game's going to be looking at. So I can then chuck in a Jim8.wave and it'll just read that line out when you're playing the game. I'm really happy with that as well. I use a sort of style sheet that makes this print out basically the same as a movie script does. I'll show you a more complicated script from. So this is the one from the Peridium game we made recently. So a lot more wordy, a lot more going on, a lot more conversations and stuff. But it was really nice. We had to spit this out, send it to the voice actor Adrian, because we were doing this in a week, so it was really fast. And he just read it all up, read it all out, and recorded it, and mixed it, and then split it up and named all the bits correctly. And it was completely effortless. I didn't really touch it at all. Just got it all back, dragged and dropped it into the folder in Unity, and the game just had dialogue. So that was awesome. All right, then the last thing I want to show you is something I put in quite recently after the Adventure Game Jam thing. There's this tool called Rhubarb, which is a command line tool there, where you pass in a line of dialogue and a WAV file with that dialogue being read out, and it'll spit out a bunch of timings for the different mouth shapes that your animation should have in order to do lip sync. And I've hooked it up so that once you've got your text file processed or whatever, you hit that button, process lip sync data, and it goes through and generates that data for all the files. Takes a few minutes, and then in your sprite animation for your character, go to my animation, I'll show you that. You put in the different mouth shapes. So in this one, I've got, you do them in the right order, and it'll just like jump between the correct ones. So I've got, that's a b, a sound, and there's like an oo, and ooh, ah, etc. And then once that's set up, you'll like, just play the game, and everything's lip synced and looks cool. So I'll show you how the final game looked with that lip sync stuff in quickly, and then I think that's the last thing to show you. Yeah, so you can see like they've got some Unity particle effects in here. It does a bit of the parallax scrolling kind of stuff, which I've got set up to do easily on props. Let's skip ahead a bit.
It'd take, didn't I?
You can play this for yourself.
I could hear. Not safe here. I'll make.
And yeah, just the lip syncing stuff.
That could have gone better.
Yeah.
Dr. Turn.
Skip.
Harry. Oh, I clenched. Keep it together. First things first. Gotta get this bleeding under control.
Yeah, so that's basically it. Inventory items, walking around, talking, all the basic stuff you want to do in an adventure game. So it was really, it was fun making this in a short amount of time, and it was a good pressure test for the adventure game system I made. But basically that's a wrap for these videos. I've shown you the basics of what I've got going. Hopefully I'll make more cool adventure games, because it's really fun doing. A really fun style of game to make. Yeah, let me know if you find this interesting. I'm happy to share code and stuff, although it's not the tools aren't really robust enough just to be able to give to anyone to mess around with themselves. But then if you're doing something similar, you might find it interesting. And happy to try if you want. I can send you through the stuff. But yeah, thanks for watching. Hopefully you found it interesting, and see you around.